looks like we're recording. So, what are we doing today? Welcome to Dave's Man Cave. We're on the new ZX10R, which is an absolute just silly bike. Completely unnecessary for the road. And we're giving its first like little shakedown up in the mountains. We are not going to go crazy. Some of the corners are still wet. This bike's only got barely 300 miles on it. Still learning the bike. It's got horrific power. And it's not that warm out. It's only like 59 degrees. So grip will not be optimal, especially where everywhere in the shade is wet. But we're going to try to have a little bit of fun. Just to kind of see how this thing does. We got the suspension set up. Another thing I'm struggling with is I may have to get the ECU flash tweaked. I love the power up top. It's tremendous. So that part of the ECU flash and unlocking the top end power, completely successful. Yeah, see, all the shade is wet. But then, down low, it's a bit twitchy and abrupt. And I was asking the dude, because it wasn't Opie that did that part. It was one of his guys. I think it's a guy that goes by the name online of Dude Mungus. Black guy with like kind of short dreads. And he does a lot of Opie's tuning, and I know he knows what he's doing. He's like also like a road racer and like a roll racer, which I don't think highly. I don't like. You can race, go to the track, and I'm sure he probably does do some of that. But his bike is set up for like, he's one of those guys that, you know, rips up and down the highway at stupid speeds and races that way. Fine, you know, do your own thing, whatever. But I have a feeling like when he tunes bikes, that's his experience mainly, and that's his preference and style. And so just all the power all the time. And that's fine if you're roll racing or drag racing. When you are on a bike with a normal wheelbase and you're up here on the twisties on a chilly day, you want some smoothness and finesse. And having a choppy, abrupt throttle that's like a light switch is not what you want when you got this kind of power and you're on the side of the tire just giving it maintenance throttle through the turn, and you hit any little bump and you either move the throttle 1% less and all of a sudden you're pitching forward because of engine braking, or you move it 1 degree back and all of a sudden it's freaking lunging, and it can feel a bit like a bucking bronco. God, the power is just effortless. I mean, I'm not even giving it a lot of throttle. Feels good. Suspension feels good. Hope did a good job on that setup. The suspension's still got a wet turn. I'll kind of break in, loosen up a little bit. But it feels very good, plush, controlled. It's not harsh. It's firm but compliant, as Kent likes to say. Anyway, so we may go in for a tweak, or maybe I'll go back over to more. I think once I bought the license for this ECU through Woolwich, Chris can pull that up and just charge me for the work. He doesn't have to charge me the license fee. Just charge me labor, so it won't be as expensive to maybe use his tune and tell him this is how I want it set up. Honestly, it was running so well stock. It was like, get rid of the fuel cut and just unlock the top end. Leave everything else the same. But I have a feeling he just made the whole sport mode way more aggressive from the bottom down. And like when I tune the ride-by-wire tables, this isn't even fueling tune. This is just how the throttle reacts to inputs. Because it's ride-by-wire, there's no cable physically going from the twist to the throttle bodies. It's like a dimmer switch on a wall. You turn it to how much, and the ECU determines how much it's going to give you. Well, With the cable ones, you could change the power profile a little bit by having a cam on the throttle. So the first part you turn it, it's a little bit, and then it kind of, the curve changes. The physical curve that the cable runs around changes to where smaller movements are giving a bigger impact. But down low, where you know you're in a parking lot, you want some control and finesse. So you can do all that electronically. When I tune Triumphs and I go in and monkey with the throttle tables, I've got that kind of down to a science. Oh, just effortless speed at small throttle openings. It's scary fast. And I'm not pushing it because I'm busy talking. There's piles of leaves that got washed out because we got hella rain 2 days ago. So I'm kind of tiptoeing through the turns because I don't know what's around them. We want to see how the bike feels today. We don't want to record and have Dave's Garage first crash video. So yeah, I'm going to puss out a little bit. Sorry. But when I'm tuning my Triumphs, you know, I take whatever was in there under 20%, and I usually increase that a little bit, make it a little more aggressive so it's not quite so lethargic and lazy. But I don't get linear in a 1-to-1 throttle ratio where you snap it to 37, you get 37%. I don't do that until like 20-25%, then I go linear. Because when you're cruising around, or you're in the turn just giving it maintenance throttle, you're typically under that 20-25% throttle. And there you want it smooth. You do not want abrupt throttle when you're on the side of the tire, right? Because on a bike that makes this kind of power, you can break traction real easily. I may go up and then down and go over to Blood Mountain. So yeah, you want to be mindful of that, and that's why I love the way that Aprilia does their electronics, or at least the way they did on my 2018 Tuono V4 1100RR. Amazing bike, perfect in every way other than the shitty valve train system. I will not buy another Aprilia until they come out with a completely new motor design, or they fix that problem with valve wear guide, where if you ride the bike hard, you got to do the valves every 6,000 miles. That's ridiculous. It's 2025 tomorrow. The next day, whatever. Those are valve intervals for Italian bikes from like the 1990s. It's unacceptable. So anyway, it is a lot colder on this side of the mountain. Aprilia's approach is you look and they don't even have a rain or road. They have sport, track, and race. And if you ask most people, well, hey, how would you interpret those ride modes? They would tell you, well, you know, sport is probably like a little more docile, and then track probably ups the ante a little bit, and then, you know, race is going to be the full-on, most aggressive. And if you said that, you'd be 100% wrong. Aprilia, being the small niche racing company type brand that they are, they think like racers. All the power all the time will not give you faster lap times. Smooth is fast. Control is fast. So on their bike, sport is the most abrupt and wheelie prone and more like a light switch, and that's your hooligan mode. You're on the street. You're probably not running the lean angles that you are on track. And so if you want to play, it's more likely going to be on the street. And so it gives you that much more abrupt hooligan raw feeling in sport. Sport is the most aggressive mode. They're all full power. They all deliver the same horsepower. There's no restrictions up top. It's just the curve of how much you twist to how much the engine opens the throttle plates and delivers. On this bike, sport is the most aggressive, and it goes down to road and down to rain. Aprilia is the other way, and I think that makes a load of sense. So as you go up to track and then race, you're still getting the full power when you get on the gas and get up in the revs, but it gives you way more, it's a lot more finesse. and it's a little more docile in race than it is in tracker sport. And that's because you want control. You don't want to be having to have your confidence shaken. You don't want to be pulling back because it's a little rowdy on the turn. No, you want it to be silky, smooth, predictable. No quick lunges, no abrupt engine braking. Smooth is fast. This ain't smooth. Not right now. Now, one could say, well, when I'm up in the mountains here, I could dial it down and put it in road mode. And that would taper off the power curve a little bit, but also turn up the traction control and the electronic rider aids. And maybe that's what I need to do and save sport for when I'm on the highway or I'm not deep into twisties on cold roads, and maybe just tame it a little bit. In fact, let's just try that real quick. Hold the button, we're in road. Alright, so let's ride it in road, which honestly is probably the better mode to ride on a day like today up here. You cannot use the power that this thing makes. You simply can't. Oh, but that power is still there. I barely touched it. Alright, I got someone behind me, so we're going to pick up the pace a little bit. Still wants to wheelie, so we're still in full power mode. I just don't know on these roads here how much grip I've got. He's on a Triumph. Sorry, when I have to concentrate a little bit more, I end up not talking. Hey, but maybe that's better for some of you. Maybe you'd rather just see the bike. I'm going to let this guy pass me, because I am absolutely tiptoeing through the corners. Honestly, up here, that's a better bike. Street Triple. It's perfect for this. Because I've got all this extra power to manage, and frankly, this thing's a handful. And this is where like a 600 would be the better bike, because I am cooking the brakes when I have to scrub off all that speed. Not as good going downhill, I've noticed. I'm always way more aggressive going uphill. Yeah, and I'm also I'm not looking out in front of the bike. I'm looking right in front of the tire, and I need to stop doing that. Not on my game today. I haven't had one of these before up here, ridden it angrily. And so I really just kind of, I'm pussing out. Mr. Porsche. Oh, that's a car I would love to ride up here. Drive, whatever. My wrists are hurting. Going downhill, I'm putting way too much of my weight on my goddamn wrists. Need to support my body with my core, or get the Healy bars, at least put them at a normal angle, because this isn't fun. Anyway, I mean, I guess when I'm riding it more aggressively, the throttle doesn't seem as snatchy. I think it's really just like low revs, low throttle input. So if you're in first gear and somebody's hairpin, like there, it just kind of, it almost feels like they didn't turn off the fuel cut. It's the on-off throttle is just nothing, and then it instantly lunges the second you touch the throttle. I'll reach out to Opie later and ask him about that. Maybe I can bring it over there tomorrow and we can go make some tweaks. I literally just want fuel cut gone. That should help the on-off throttle snatchiness. And remove any restrictions, limiters, any of that crap up top. That's it. So, I mean, the bike's feeling good, but it's gonna take some getting used to. Bikes like this are a handful in these kinds of roads, because the speed that they generate is so ridiculous, and the throttle is, and on a liter bike making 180 something horses at the wheel is just, you know, it's just always ready to go instantly. And so, you know, on a 600, you can kind of just rev it out. The power's a little bit lazy. You got to stick with it, and then it builds. It's all very simple. It's all very linear. It's a little more predictable. So, I'm going to head over towards Blood. Got someone pulling up behind me. I don't know what he's on. Yeah, like I'm just tiptoeing through turns, and I don't know why. I think it's just a confidence thing. I need to get to know the bike, feel it, feel the limits, the tires, like everything's different. This is a very different animal than the Street Fighter I just came off of. The Street Fighter was really fun and comfortable, and it was aggressive with the wider bars, and you kind of just point, squirt. But this thing, you know, you're leaning differently. I don't know why. It's when you're hunched over the front and leaning, it's just a different thing than when you're upright and leaning. Ultimately, this is the faster bike, but I am not riding it faster right now. And maybe after a couple months I get used to it. It's a hot day where I know I've got tons of grip. Get it out on track to where I can really feel where my limit on this bike is. I think that'll be a different ball game, but for right now, I'm just here to finish breaking it in and getting a feel for it. We're not going to set any tasty hot laps today. I'm going to turn this off and we'll be back for, we'll get a little footage of Blood Mountain. give some final thoughts here before my battery runs out. So, yeah, you know, I'm going to leave the ECU flash the way it is for now. Honestly, it's been, it's weird. It's like, it's very snatchy sometimes, like in some areas. But it typically is like real low off throttle. Once you're in the twisties kind of playing with it, your revs are up. You know, one thing I noticed since the flash was the quick shift is like way more aggressive on auto blip. So I'm at low RPMs, low throttle. It gives a really aggressive rrr, which makes it lurch. So I'm gonna kind of hear that, kind of low. Rrr. But when you're up at higher RPMs and you're coming down, it is butter smooth and silky. So maybe don't use auto blip when you're at 3,500 RPMs and no throttle and you're just tooling along in a parking lot, right? Probably don't need that. So I think for now what I'm going to do is just kind of ride around and really just learn the bike. Another thing I struggled with on one of the roads, the second clip without audio, well, without my talking, where it was mounted down here. I was on Richard B. Russell, and I've got to change up my visor, my face shield, because when I would go uphill facing into the sun, and I'm going in and out of the trees, the branches, it was like light dark, light dark. You can't see it on the camera here, but my pin lock and my visor itself is all kind of scuffed up. I think from opening and closing it, it rubs on the helmet itself. So it's all like white scuffed up. And you don't notice as much when you're just driving around, but when the sun hits it, it refracts the light in my... I was getting blind coming into some of the turns. I couldn't see the turn. So I really kind of just backed off and slowed down on some of them because of that. I was like, shit, so I got to go get a... My helmet's in good shape. It's only like 3 years old. But I got to go get a new face shield and a new inner pin lock shield. Because this one's all nicked up from rocks. It's got just rubbing on the helmet. It's got wear marks on it. And when the sunlight hits it, it refracts it into all different directions. It just creates this big white glare right in your eyes. So I'm coming up into a turn, and it's really deep in the shade, so it's very dark. And all of a sudden, I got a super bright light right in front of my eyes that's blinding me. I cannot see the turn and anything in the dark, where the road is, where it ends, where the ditch is. Not ideal. As far as how the bike handles, it's a dream, but it's taken getting used to. I've been on a naked bike for a little while, for the last year, and I had the MT10 before that. Yeah, I had a ZX14, but I've been riding naked bikes pretty consistently for a while, and it's a different body position. It feels weird to me at first to kind of dive into a turn leaned over. It's just a different body position. And I'm also being very mindful of just how powerful this damn thing is. So I'm trying, and the fact that it's a cold, well, it's 71 now, but up in the mountains, you know, it's in the upper 50s up there. It's not that warm. You can get your tires up to a good temperature, but it's not like this summertime when it's 94 degrees out, and you know that those things are like bubble gum. They're just sticking to everything. So you add all that up, not an impressive ride, but that's not really what it was supposed to be. It wasn't a, hey, let me show you how fast I am. That's not what that was about. It was, I wanted to get up in the mountains and see what this bike was like riding for several hours at a time, and getting it up in the twisties and playing a bit. And what I found is, I think when I'm in the really twisty bits, there's no way to put down the power. You're never really getting up in the upper rev range. You're never at 100% throttle. In those situations, I'm just dropping it into road mode. It softens the power a little bit, but it cranks up the IMU-based traction control and other things, the safety systems. It dials them up a little bit. And when you're riding a bike that's making somewhere around 185 horsepower at the wheel, up in very tight twisties, and there's some wet spots, and you come around the turn, and because of all the rain, the runoff was running some leaves into the road. When you're in that environment, you're better off on, you know, that street triple you saw me following. I just going downhill and still play with the bike. It's like you got to get your comfort level up. I'll rail on a bike on a road, I know, but I also have to know the bike. I have to have my muscle memory. You get in tune to the bumps and how it reacts to things. You're in you're used to your body position, and you just kind of go on autopilot in some ways. It's very hard to just do that on a new bike like this. So following him, I was like, he's got the better bike for this. And honestly, a ZX10R would be better for those kind of roads. I don't regret getting the 10 because the 10 does have better electronics. It does have auto blip. It does have better brakes. Everything about it is better than the ZX10R. But part of me is like, you know what? I could have saved myself $5,000 and just gotten the 6. And honestly, in that environment, it'd be every bit as fast as this. The 600 is very confidence boosting because you're not fighting the bike. You're not feeling like the bike is trying to kill you all the time. Now, the electronics help mitigate some of that, but you are, when you're in sport or even road mode, you are very mindful that you're like, oh, I'm riding a killer whale or a tiger shark. It's very exciting. It's very powerful. It's very fun. But in the back of your head, you know that that thing, if given just a split second, it will turn around and bite your fucking head off. And that's what this feels like, which is where the 600, yeah, it'll go fast, but you got to work a little harder to get to it. The power is not as accessible. Here it's just like, bam, right there. And so you have to be very careful. And while you're thinking about that, if you grab a little too much on a 600, nothing really happens. You just, all right, I sped up a little more. Let me roll off a little bit. It's very smooth. This is like, and it's just instantly on. And it distracts you, and it takes a little bit of your confidence away and your concentration, because instead of focusing on the road, you're a little leery and hesitant, and you're focusing on how to tame the beast. A ZX10R is not a beast. I know people that have only ridden 600s think it's a beast. It's not. Anybody that's on a 600 and talk about the R6 is a beast, the ZX10R is a beast, has never ridden this. They've never ridden a Tumbusa or an R1 or an Aprilia 1100 or, you know, basically any kind of true modern leader bike. A 600 is very fast and it's capable. It's not a beast. It's very, very tame. The only decent power it makes is way up between 12,000 and 15,000 RPMs. There's a very little window. Up to that point, it ain't making shit. And so when you're on the road, it's very beginner friendly. If you grab a handful of throttle, it doesn't immediately kick you off. It's got a, and then it builds, and then you hit the power. Well, if you realize, hey, I shouldn't have given it that much, you have that 7 seconds or whatever to you know, rein it in a little bit and roll off. On bikes like this or R1s or any modern leader bike, shit happens so fast. And so you're going through the twisties and the road opens up a little bit and you're like, oh, I'll just rip on it a little bit on the straightaway, make up some time. Yeah, on a 600 then you'd be coming up into the next turn at 80. And you'd have to brake from 80 down to 40 or whatever you're going to go at. Here you're at $120. And you go to brake at the same braking marker where you normally brake, and you're like, holy shit, I'm going 30, 40 miles an hour faster than I thought I was. And you have all that extra speed, so then it's almost like panic. Oh shit, shit, shit. These bikes are ultimately faster, but the 600s and 636s and 750s and Panigale V2 and the KTM Duke 890 and the, what's another good one? Any of the other mid-sized bikes, MT09s, they're easy. They won't go as fast ultimately as this, but they're easier to ride faster. Up in those mountain roads, I don't care who you are, you will not be faster on this bike than you would on an MT09 or a Street Triple RS 765 making 70 horsepower less. You won't. the power this thing makes is useless up there. But so for people that think you need the leader bike, you might say, well, you're being a hypocrite. You bought the leader bike. Yeah, I did. Honestly, I was prepared to buy the 636. But my wife's like, you are a big guy. You weigh 100 pounds more than most of your friends. And you do go to Road Atlanta, and you do like bigger power. She's like, and it's got better electronics and all the better tech. She's like, if you get the 636, you've already had one of those, and you'll probably get bored with it. She's like, the 10 will keep you busy longer. And so I went with it. But honestly, if you're on the fence, if you're going to do track days at big tracks like Road Atlanta, if you went to Coda, where you got some nice long straightaways, yeah, the 1000 is going to put down the power, and you're really going to rock it down those straights. And maybe that'll make up for some of the time you lose in the turns. It did for me on the ZX14. Cameron was killing me in the turns on his Z900. Now, he's a little bit of a better rider than I am. At least at this point in my life. He's probably where I was at my peak, but that was my peak. I'm not at my peak anymore. But he was like right on me and could have passed me in the turns, but it would have been pointless because I would just rocket past him on the straight. So our lap times were probably, the same. Maybe I beat him by a second, but that's just because the front and back straight, that 14 just had so much power. But did make me faster. I wasn't a faster rider because of that. I just bought a faster bike than he did. And if he went and bought the same bike, then he would have been faster than me again. So everything's relative. Jimmy's going through this right now, and I'm trying to tell him, like, look, I see how you ride. He's like me. Past his prime as far as riding. Not that we still can't ride fast, but at 52, 53, we're starting to slow down a little bit. Part of it is because we're just not as flexible. Part of it is probably also just being a little more hesitant. When you're young, you're indestructible. Nothing can happen to you. On Christmas Day, Jimmy is supposed to come over for prime rib dinner and all that stuff. And I got a call from TJ. Jim's in the ER. He dislocated his shoulder on one of those stupid electric one-wheel things. You don't think about that shit when you're younger, but you get into your 50s, and you're like, I slept wrong. I lifted a heavy box yesterday, and now my back hurts, It's just part of getting older. And it takes longer to heal. And you start to hold back a little bit when you turn. Maybe your eyesight's not as good. Maybe your reflexes aren't quite where they were. A lot of it, I think, is mental. At 53, I'm still in decent enough shape and strong enough. I could ride as fast as I ever have. But I almost don't want to, and I just don't have the motivation to push myself to do it. Because you just start thinking, fuck, if I got laid up in the, if I got really hurt and I'm out of work for a while, like, what's that going to look like? And is that going to put me in a financial ruin? And what's that going to mean for Donna? Like, you start thinking about those things later in life. When you're young, you're just like, fuck, I don't want to go as fast as possible. So be realistic with yourself. On a day like today, just up there ripping up and down those couple roads I was on, honestly, I would have rather had the ZX6R. It's less stressful. I'd be going just as fast. The engine would be screaming at 15,000 RPMs. It would have been exciting. I just wouldn't have the massive power to just go stupid fast when I want. But you can't do that in the twisties. You can't do that on a smaller track like Jennings or Talladega. Not the big NASCAR track, the Talladega GP, the little motorcycle track. On those tracks, I think even Atlanta Motorsports Park, I don't think it has any real long straightaways. If you're on Barber, you got some. Road Atlanta's got some. Coda's got some. I think probably VIR maybe. Roebling has some fast spots. Honestly, I would say that if the ZX6R had an auto blipper and a little bit newer electronics, I probably would have gotten that. I would have saved myself $5,000, but it's like it didn't have auto blip. It had older, it didn't have Brembo brakes, I don't think. Not like these anyway. Maybe it's got Brembos now. I don't remember what maybe I think there was Tokiko or something. But this has got much better suspension. There's a lot of goodies on here. But honestly, I probably would have done... If the Gixxer 750 had ABS, a decent electronics, even if it's not the latest and greatest, if it just had a quick shift with auto blip, ABS, and basic ride modes and traction control, I would have gotten that. That would be all the bike I would ever get. I hate that Suzuki is so fucking lazy when it comes to putting money into their bikes. The Gixxer 1000 is a great bike. It finally did get an update, but they haven't updated it since 2017. That's going on 8 years. 7 years, whatever. The Gixxer 750 is the same bike. I think they changed the plastics a little bit in 2012, but it's still basically the same motor, same lack of electronics. It's the same as everything. It's from like 2010, 2011. It's a 15-year-old bike. You're buying a 2011 bike at 2025 prices, and I'm like, I'm not paying over $13,000 for a bike that doesn't even have fucking ABS. It doesn't have a quick shifter. It doesn't have anything. It has a high power and a low power mode. I think it just retards the spark, and it's got a softer fuel map. That's it. You can put it in rain mode. That's it. And I'm like, I'm not paying $13,000 plus taxes and fees and all that other shit, so it's a $16,000 bike out the door, and it's a 2010 bike. It's got nothing. You can buy a Ninja 400 that's got more electronics on it than the freaking 750, which is a shame because the 750's got a great motor, excellent chassis, decent ergonomics, it's got Brembos, it's got good big piston fork suspension. It's a great bike. It's just a dinosaur. And I'm not paying new bike price for old bike. All they've done is change the color of the plastic and the stickers in 15 years. That's it. I will not reward them by buying their product. But if they did, that'd be the perfect bike. You put a pipe and an ECU flash on it, and you're making 132 to 135 horses at the wheel. That's all you need. That's be a little ripper. More than a 600, but not alarmingly fast like this, where you feel like you're kind of holding back because you're almost like afraid of it. So what this ride today taught me was I need to get out and practice more on this bike and just get comfortable on it. The other thing I need to do, and I am doing as soon as I get home, I start crunching video, is I'm pulling out my MacBook and my happy ass is going to Hella Bars and I'm ordering the track stars. They come pre-drilled, look stock, everything. Half-inch wider per side, 1 3/8 inch higher, and 3/8 of an inch back will make all the difference because my arms aren't tired, my neck, my shoulder, nothing. It's my wrists being at this bent angle like this. I want my wrist to be straight. And the slightly wider bars will also just be a little more comfortable to move around, give you a little more leverage. I loved them on my ZX10R. Sarah loved them on hers. Made all the difference. Her neck was killing her. Put on the Healy bar. She's like, problem fixed. Ooh, I gotta get gas somewhere. 92 miles, huh? And the gas light's on. I had them on a 750. I had them on my R1. They are worth every penny. I figured, let me go ride for several hours and see. Now, I'll say the seat on this, great. It's better than the Ducati seat. But my wrists are, they're not happy right now. And I know you can say, well, don't put your weight on your, I know. But especially when you're doing a lot of downhill, it's natural for me to just do that. So I'll understand some people's point about not buying parts to compensate for bad technique. I get that, but this bike is made for guys to be racing on a track. But living with it on a day-to-day basis, when you're in your 50s, I'm going to get the more comfortable bars and then work on my technique. But I need to start by just putting my wrists at a more optimal angle. Everything else, this thing has been amazing. The brakes are good. It's going to take a track test when I do a track day. I will be signing up for a track day this spring. I do have to get some new gear. I'm going to go down to the Dionysi store because I am done with A-Stars. I will not buy A-Stars gear anymore. It just doesn't last. It does not hold up. The zippers, even though they're from YKK, they're just shit. They do not last long. I've had nothing but zipper problems with A-Stars, and I'm not going to deal with their stupid customer service in Italy. So I'm going to go to a Dainese store where it's a Dainese store. It's not Psycho Gear that just happens to sell other sell brands. So if I have a problem with something, I can go right to the store and go, give me a new one, or whatever it is you guys do. I wish it wasn't on the other side of Atlanta. Well, let's see, anything else before my battery runs out? Now, it needs Healy bars. We'll do an install video of those and show the before and after and do a ride review of those. Steering damper perfect. Chassis is very poised, very, very controlled. Honestly, I just wasn't really pushing today. Between getting used to the new bike and trying to figure out the snatchy throttle and ride modes, and kind of just getting my comfort and confidence on how the bike rolls around. It steers very differently than the Ducati. Not that either one is good or bad, it's just different. It takes a different amount of input, your balance, you're just in a different position, which at first you feel awkward, it doesn't feel natural, so you're kind of like hesitate, don't commit. It's 99% mental. I am 99% mental. But we'll continue putting miles on the bike and learn it. I'm sure by the time I've gone and done a couple mountain runs, it'll start to feel like, a nice well-worn pair of shoes that you're comfortable with. Right now, it's the brand new stiff shoes that are giving you a blister. It's just part of it. I'm gonna go search for gas, and hope to see you all later. So, everybody have a good one and be safe.